Hi, this is Scott, Kilo Sierra 6, Delta Alpha Yankee, but since we're talking GMRS radios today, I'll also throw in WRTI 407 because for today what we're going to be taking a look at is the Wouxun KG-905 Golf. Now, this radio has been out for a while now, and it comes from the far distant past of the 2021 GMRS world. And while only 4 years have passed, if you look at the kind of radios that are being put out now versus what was put out when GMRS was just starting to catch on, this sort of represents what I think Wouxun thought the market was looking for, but found out right away that the large majority of the market was looking for a little bit more. But this still addresses the needs of a fairly large group of people out there that are looking for a radio that is just very straightforward, very simple, and very easy to work with. Now, I'm the kind of guy that likes a lot of bells and whistles on my radios. I like cool displays. I like all the features I can get on a radio. But again, there's a bunch of folks out there that they just want a radio that just does radio, period. They're not looking for a police scanner. They're not looking for a GPS unit. They don't care about all the crazy colorful displays. They just want a radio that when you turn it on, they can work those 22 simplex channels and work some repeaters, and that's it. And they're also looking for, while they're doing that, something that is rugged, weather protected, and dependable. And this is a radio. Like I said, there's a reason this thing is still around, despite some of these other more feature-rich radios that are currently being sold. So Wouxun kind of covers the whole spectrum all the way across. So let's talk in general about some of the features. First thing to know about this radio, this is a monoband UHF only GMRS radio. So for transmission purposes, it only transmits on the frequencies that have been signed to GMRS channels associated with the GMRS service, and it will not transmit anywhere else. In terms of receive, it will only receive from 400 to 470 megahertz. So as I said, monoband. It's a 256 channel radio. Now, this is an early attempt at scan groups from Wouxun, and they've since moved on to something a little bit more effective. But they've taken those 256 available memory slots and they have broken those up into 16 scan groups of 16 channels each. So there you go. How effective that is, it's not terribly effective, to be honest with you. But the kind of people that are going to own this radio are probably only going to have 50 or 60 channels maximum programmed into this thing. So having scan groups really isn't all that helpful to begin with. So it's the kind of thing you can sort of not really worry too much about. But later iterations of Wouxun GMRS radios do feature scan groups of larger allocations of channels. But yeah, very simple, fairly straightforward. So let's talk about a few of the other things. One of the first things you're going to notice is the absence of any kind of, well, it really doesn't have much of a front panel per se. Now, if you look at a radio that is very similar in its features, at least, although the KG-S88 Golf, which I have here, has more channels, but it too is also a monoband radio. It does have scan groups. The scan groups are larger, but it also has these numeric dual function keys here, so there's a little bit more versatility in terms of the front panel, but this is also a little bit more versatile radio. Another feature that these two radios share, they're both super heterodyne receivers, so that means that the radio is going to be less inclined to be desensitized in a high RF environment. Reception capability should be a little bit more fine-tuned, a little better than a typical direct conversion receiver, although other direct conversion receiver radios like the 935 Golf, pretty darn good for direct conversion receivers, so I don't have too much in terms of complaints there. Pricing, this is a $99 radio, well, $99.95, so it's 5 cents off of $100. But how they sort of break down is $99 for the 905 Golf, about $139 for the KG-S88 Golf, $149 for a typical legacy KG-935 Golf, and I think it's $169 for the Plus version. So they're sort of in stair steps in terms of you get what you pay for. Each time you pay a little bit more money, you get a little bit more versatility. But as I said, there's a large audience out there that doesn't really need that versatility. They're paying for features they're not going to use, so why pay for them, right? So as I said, if you're the kind of person who just wants a radio just to be a radio, you don't need it to be a police scanner, a GPS unit, you don't care about the fancy displays, you just want to work those 22 simplex channels and those repeater channels, this is a radio for that particular person. It's also a rugged radio. It's weather protected. It's IP66. So what that means is, well, it's not submersible. You can point a 12.5 millimeter water nozzle at this thing from any direction and spray the hell out of it. So to convert it to Freedom units, that is a 1/2 inch diameter hose that you can spray water directly onto this radio, and it's going to survive the event. So this means it's going to be good in a rainstorm. It's a decent trail radio. It's a decent Jeep radio, because in addition to fighting against the water intrusion, that also saves you against dust intrusion, which is important on a trail where there's a lot of dust. And if you have a radio that's not IP rated, you're going to get dust in that radio, and that dust will kill your radio in short order. So this radio is designed for rugged outdoor use, and because it's simple to operate, it's accessible to people with very minimal skill levels. So I think I've talked enough about the general specifications of the radio, so let's do the thing I normally do, and let's do the walk around the radio. So we'll start at the top here, and we have our on-off volume control knob. So obviously you turn that to the right, turns the radio on, and turn it a little bit more, turns the volume up. Of course, in regards to volume, talking about the speaker real quick, this thing has really nice audio, so no complaints there. You'll notice on the display here, we have a monochrome LCD display, which the more I deal with dark colored displays, I'm finding I actually like the monochrome LCD and the amber displays a little bit more than the colored displays, because they are easier for me to see. The display screen is fairly large, and the features depicted there are large and easy to see, which is kind of a little bit of a, although it's not too terribly bad on the S88 Golf, it's a little bit more cramped in terms of screen, so this is a little bit easier to see, especially if you have diminished eyesight like I do and I need reading glasses. I don't wear those if I'm on a trail. I got to dig them out. So this is something I can actually see what I'm doing. So moving to the left of the volume control knob, we have our channel control knob. This is also a knob that can be used for menu navigation. So if you're in the menu, you can use that knob to cycle up and down through the menu, which the menu is very, very simple. But furthermore, let's get back into that menu. If you need to navigate up and down, you also have the up-down arrow keys, and those also will help you navigate your channel. So you can use either method, turn it at the top or use the up-down arrow keys on the front panel. Nice and simple. Now coming to the antenna. The antenna is not glued or staked or pinned or anything. I've had pretty good luck when it comes to that. Now the antenna itself is an SMA female antenna. The SMA male connection is on the radio side. Not my preferred arrangement, but it works. And I always mention this in every one. I actually get tired of saying it, but the whole idea here is the center conductor pin that you see here, this little brass pin in the center, it is actually not that difficult to bend that a little bit when you're putting the antenna on, especially if you're bringing it in an angle. That's why you want to be very careful when you're initially seating the antenna. You get it cocked a little bit while you're there. Not only might you cross thread the connection, but also you could bend that pin over. Now if you bend that pin, you're going to have to send the radio back to have it repaired, versus if it was a female SMA connector on this side and the male was on this side. If you bent it, you're out an antenna, and it's a very easy thing to replace yourself. This is not something that's easy to replace on your own. So I prefer the other method. Now, the factory antenna, how well does it work? It works like a lot of ocean radios. The factory antenna, I don't have any complaints about the factory antenna. It's really good. And I've tried this with, I've actually swapped out the little 701 Golf antenna and put it on this radio, and I'm not seeing too much difference. The main reason I have the 701 Golf antenna on this S88 Golf is that antenna is so rigid on the factory antenna. I like a little bit of flexibility because I have a bad tendency of dropping my radios, and I don't really want anything putting a bunch of torque on the SMA connection for the antenna. But I would have no complaints whatsoever about running this factory antenna on this radio and not changing it out. It's good to go. So moving to the left side of the radio here, we have our PTT, which the PTT is not hinged anywhere. It's of the variety wherever you press it, you're gonna get action. It's not overly sensitive, so you don't have to worry about bumping it and inadvertently keying the radio. It's got a little bit of a built-up area, top, bottom, and sides to keep it from being nudged. We have two programmable side keys here that can be set up for a number of features. Now I have for the top key, side key 1, a short press on that actually starts my scan, and the scan is okay. Most of these radios, very seldom do you see a scan that really kicks. Yaesu does a good job of that. ICOM does a good job of that. Most of the other import radios, not so much so. I never got around to it with the KG-905G, but that is the slowest scan rate I've actually ever seen on a consumer radio. It's deplorable. But this one kicks along fairly nicely, and you do have the ability to set up your scan so that you can have a primary channel, so that it'll scan the primary channel, then it'll scan the next channel in the sequence, go back and scan, go back and scan, go back and scan. So you can set that up, although I don't utilize that for myself, but well, picked up some traffic there. I'll go ahead and stop the scan then. Our lower side key here, oh, I have that. Sorry, turn it up so you can hear it. All I have this set for is a long press. Gives me Monty. Now, every time I do that, I hear how loud it is. For some reason, it doesn't really pick up on the speaker too well, because the speaker is actually back here. So let's take it out of frame for a second. There. I just stumbled at that after how many different videos have I done, wondering why people can't hear how loud the radio is. But as I said, it's good and loud. And the Monty function is good for a couple of different reasons. One, to kind of see what your volume level is like. But two, if you have a distant channel that either it's not breaking squelch, or if it is, it's intermittent, you can press that down and it removes all applied squelch to that particular frequency, and it'll hear everything on that frequency. So if you're trying to pull in just whatever snippets of that traffic you can get, you can use the Monty for that. So moving to the front panel, this is where I normally talk about the front panel, but I've already talked about the front panel, haven't I? But I'll review. We have 4 available keys here. If you press the menu key, it gets you into the menu. Now this menu is super simple. So you just simply, let's go ahead and move to one here. So Roger, that's going to be your Roger beep, something I disable for my radios. Let's say Roger beep is something that you wanted to effect a change on. You put the arrow next to that items, which is item number 8, and all you simply do is just press the menu again, and you can cycle between your 2 selections. You go to the selection you want. In this case, I want it off. Press it again, and we go out. If I want to exit the menu, I go out. It is as simple as that. The menu itself consists of, I'm going in the wrong direction here. Let's go all the way down to item number 1. Yeah, I should just said it. 34 selections. That's really all there is. Everything you would need to do here, you can. Want to see what your DC voltage is? Right there, 8.1 volts. If you want to affect some changes on, for instance, a pre-programmed preset DIY channel for a repeater, you can go in and you can affect the received, that's DTC, sorry. Let's go up to, yeah, wide, narrow, transit. So you kind of get the idea there. It's super simple to get into. Now, one thing that you're going to have a challenge with is, let's say you want to actually add a channel in the field. This is where the radio kind of starts falling on its face in terms of features. So this comes pre-programmed with your 22 GMRS simplex channels. And it comes pre-programmed with, I believe it's 8. It actually might be 16 I guess for lack of a better term, it's a Baofeng term, but DIY repeater channels. Now these are the 8 repeater channels that are already set up. All you need to do is add tones. Where you run into a problem is, let's say you already have those filled up and you want to throw another one in. You're not going to be able to do it from this front panel because you have no VFO. You have nowhere to go to actually enter in a channel. So this radio, one area where it does fail, and that would explain in a big way why the S88 Golf came into existence, is this does have a VFO capability. This does have the ability to punch in a frequency and add a repeater to the memory system from the front panel. Something you really cannot effectively do with the 905 Golf. So it's not a terribly versatile radio to use in the field. Having said that, let me grab my screwdriver. Okay. Having said that, you do have the ability to, of course, program this radio from your computer and get it set up the way you want. And you could conceivably, and I have done this, you could add additional DIY repeater channels onto this. So you could have available repeaters that you could modify in the field if necessary, but it's going to take a little bit of a setup. Now, this does use a standard K1 type speaker mic connection. It's one that you're familiar with. If you're familiar with most of the Chinese import radios utilize that. It's of course the a Kenwood design, but it's just the 2-pin plug set for speaker mics, headsets, that kind of thing, but also for programming cables. Now, what I use to program this and all GMRS, or rather Wouxun radios, is the is the magic red cable. Now, I'm going to do a little pitch for the magic red cable here because I have recently run into a number of radios. For instance, I got a Redivus radio recently, and it came with a programming cable, and it will not communicate with my computer. And I'm using Windows 11, and it's one of those things. Although this does say supports Windows 10, I have not had a problem with this cable being able to program any radio. That's not just Wouxun radios, but Baofengs, Redivuses, TYTs, on and on. And actually, I'm sorry, it wasn't a Redivus radio. It was a TYT radio I had the problem with. It was a MD UV390. So this red cable, if you're looking to buy a programming cable for your radios that do utilize that K1 type plug set, get you one of these. You will not be disappointed, honestly. It's a lot better than a lot of the generic cables that have the generic chip. This has got the good stuff in it. I don't know that much about USB cables, so I'm just going to say it works on everything I need it to work on. So there. Now, another thing I'll point out is your cover here, you'll notice this nice gasket. Like I mentioned, this has IP66 protection, but that protection is only in place if this cover is on. If you plug a speaker mic into this radio, unless the speaker mic itself is gasketed, let me unthread that once again, we'll take a look at this. If it's gasketed, it might provide a little additional protection, but again, that IP66 rating will suffer if you have a speaker mic on here. It's just something you need to be aware of. So let's close this back up. Let's move to the back side, and we've got our belt clip, which affixes to the radio body itself. Nice sturdy design. It's got a staked pin. No complaints here. Wide range for opening, so good to go there. Another thing we'll note on the back is our USB-C charge port. Now, this does have the capability of being able to be charged USB-C. Now, this, I think, might be I don't think this existed back when the radio was initially introduced, but it certainly does on the models that are being purchased now. So if that's something that that you like, and I'm going to admit, I was a little slow on the USB-C charging. At some point, I'm going to show a picture of my box of charge cradles for radios. It's a gigantic box, given that I've got 59 HTs now. I have, and it's this rat's nest that I have to pull out every time I go to start charging radios. I'm starting to really like this because I can just plug this in, set it on the table next to me while I'm working. A couple hours later, we're good to go. And this certainly does work. There's a charge indicator light on there to let you know when it's done, and I've charged this a couple of times now using that. Works great. So let's have a look at the battery here. We've got a little battery latch, got an arrow, comes off quite easily. Got a nice deep recess here. We have all of our relevant FCC numbers and stickers on the inside. We've got a gasketed battery connection there. So they are definitely not fooling around with that IP66 rating. The battery itself, we have a 2600 milliamp hour battery pack, lithium ion, and this is an excellent battery life, by the way. To install the battery, you just simply index the tabs and then press down, it locks into place, and you are good to go. Simple as that. Spare batteries aren't terribly expensive on this, nor any of the other accessories. So that's kind of it. There's not much else to talk about except to give my anecdotal experiences with this, and I'll go over some of the signal testings I did. So let's first talk about output power. They claim 5 watts on this, and every time I hear the term 5 watts on every radio I look at, I'm going to go, it's going to be 4 to 4.5, which is almost always the case. And in this case, what I tested was channel 1, channel 11, and channel 15. Channel 1, 4.25 watts. Channel 15, 4.25 watts on a digital meter. Very consistent on the output power. Now on the low power channels, and that's going to be your channels 8 through 14, they are supposed to be below half a watt. I was getting about 0.2. Which is fairly low, but remember, those are our interstitial legacy FRS channels, and they're limited. I will tell you this, if you use a CPS to set this up, you can move things around in there, and I actually set the output power to high, and this does have 2 output power settings. You have high or low. High is going to be your 5 watts or approximating that, and low is going to be half watt or below. I set those interstitial channels via CPS to high, and it still only gave me 0.2. And I imagine the way this radio is programmed in, it's based on the actual frequency that's programmed in as to what the output power is. It doesn't matter where you put it on the actual memory channel list within the CPS. So if it's any of those frequencies, you're not going to get any more than half a watt. But nobody uses those anyway, so there you go. Signal reports. I'm able to open and operate repeaters with this as well as I can with either the 935 Golf or the S88. The signal report was good. There was no report of it being muffled or altered or excuse me, hold on. Sorry about that. I had to do the cough. That's why I jammed up there. It's oftentimes when you have a weather protected radio, the protective membrane over the actual mic opening can cause the radio to sound muffled or low in the audio. I'm not excuse me. Oh, the fires. We've got Central Valley of California. The entire place is on fire right now, and the skies outside, it looks like February. It's overcast, but it's actually all smoke. I apologize. I may edit this out. If I don't, oh well, there you go. So, as I was saying, with the weather protection membrane over the microphone opening, you can get that low audio. This doesn't have that. So it sounds just fine. Incoming audio, as far as receive goes, as I mentioned, nice, loud, clear. Now, signal discrimination, which this is where the super heterodyne receiver really comes into play. I won't go into all the differences between a direct conversion and a super heterodyne receiver. A lot of people, they just hear super heterodyne and someone told them, hey, that's good. In a lot of cases, yes, you are dead on correct. A lot of direct conversion receivers have very little filtering. So what will happen is if you get in a high RF environment, the radio can become desensitized and it's just deaf. It just doesn't receive anything because the receiver has been overwhelmed. There are direct conversion receivers such as the 935 Golf that do have some degree of filtering on them and are actually very good. In fact, hang on, I'm going to turn here for just a second. I can show you another radio completely out of class, but this is the ICOM ICT-10. This is a direct conversion receiver on this radio, and this is a high-end analog radio, and the reception capabilities on this radio are amazing. So when you hear direct conversion receiver, don't immediately run for the hills. It can still be done well, but if it's a direct conversion receiver on a radio that's $27, yeah, it's not going to be that great. This one though, super heterodyne, different story, and it is very, very, very good. There is nothing that this doesn't pick up. I've encountered other radios where I can, and I always use a control radio, and oftentimes what I'll use is a Yaesu FT60, which is sort of the gold standard as far as receivers go. And this thing is hearing literally everything the FT60 is hearing, even the most distant, hard to pick up signals. This thing is catching it nice. So I have no complaints whatsoever about that. So if you were looking for a very simple, very durable, very rugged radio, and something that is just going to do pure radio work alone, and that's that, by all means, I can recommend this highly. But I'm going to tell you, in all honesty, if you think you're going to like radio at all, you're going to want to start with something a little bit more versatile. But what I usually tell people is if you think you're going to like radio at all and you're going to expand, just go with a 935 Golf and call it a day. But like I say, I'm not the one spending your money for you. I'm just providing you with different alternatives and solutions that you can then pick from. So you could safely buy any one of these three radios and you're going to have a really decent experience. It's just largely dependent on what you think you're going to need the radio to do. You don't need any of that kind of stuff, and you just want something to throw into the Jeep. Here you go, KG-905 Golf. So with that, I will bring it to a close. Thank you for watching and or listening. This is Scott, Kilo Sierra 6, Delta Alpha Yankee from Visalia, California. Have a wonderful day.